It's doing two things, this pandemic. It's accelerating life and accelerating death.
Hey, you're watching The Intersection.
Where faith, life, and culture meet. I'm Eric Targe.
I'm Justin May, and I feel rusty saying those words a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been a couple of months, I think, since we released our last Intersection. Things got crazy.
Well, we had plans, y'all. We had big plans. We had a whole slate of people
I
to
grew
talk
up
to.
hearing my grandmother regularly say, "Mensch troch Gott loch." It's the Yiddish phrase of "man plans, God laughs."
See, now I feel very like this is educational already.
Yeah.
So we were going to do some stuff, and then and then what happened?
Oh, come on, really? You're gonna throw me under the bus?
Well, yeah, because I didn't cancel anything.
Okay, I got COVID. My family got COVID. We all got sick. I was in the hospital. So thanks for making me feel bad about it, shaming me.
Well,
Yeah.
Get it together, bro.
It was
Okay.
I actually don't recommend COVID, if anyone's wondering. I give it probably about 2 stars.
Yeah, two out of 10.
Maybe one. Oh, yeah.
2 out of 10. 1 star is pretty hateful, man.
Yeah, 1 star, someone who leaves it 1 star on Yelp, you look and you go, oh, that's a mean person.
Yeah.
Every place deserves that. Like, you couldn't find at least one thing you liked about it. You're giving it the lowest rating.
It's not good.
Yeah. No.
Hey, so we're here.
We're back.
We're back, and man, we're talking about a pretty exciting, a pretty interesting, a pretty important topic.
We're actually going to be talking about quite a few important topics over the next few weeks. We've got exciting guests that we're bringing in. I'm so excited for them.
Unless somebody gets sick again.
I'm not going to get sick again. I'm not even sure if that's possible at this point. It's too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the immunity lasts at least a certain amount of time. But no, today we're actually bringing in, we're going to be talking about evangelism. So
That's important.
It's incredibly important. It's something that's supposed to be a part of all of our lives as Christians.
Yeah,
right?
so don't turn this off and tune out because it's like, well, I don't really want to be told anything about that. You'll actually like this. You'll actually, I'm willing to guarantee. If not, email him. Okay, we're talking about evangelism, and why is evangelism important?
Well, I mean, evangelism is obviously important. One, because we are commissioned to do it, right? You got the Great Commission. Everyone thinks about that. And a lot of people say, well, it's not really so much a commission in their own hearts and minds. They go, well, it's the Great Suggestion, right? Go out into all the worlds and make disciples of, it's a good idea, but that's not what we're told to do. We're told to go and do it. It's a command. And then secondarily, it's our identity, right? It's who we are. So we think about like Acts 1:8. You got that verse,
Yes,
right?
I do. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth.
And you just look at that verse, right? And it doesn't say, what I love about that verse is Jesus doesn't say to us, okay, go and witness to the ends of the earth. And someone's listening right now, they're like, no, but he did. But no, he didn't. He said, go and be my witnesses.
Right. It's like it's who you are. It's as you helpfully said earlier to me, and I'm like, I'm going to steal it now. It's not a verb, it's a noun.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is your identity. Wherever you go, this is what you do. It's like, hey, Eric Targe, you're a goofball, and you're going to be a goofball in this building.
That's how we're going to do this?
Yeah, or outside the building. If you go on a trip to the Holy Land, you're a goofball in the Holy Land. Like wherever you go,
Sure.
Goofball.
Why not? But the thing here is, with evangelism, it's not about are you going to be a witness or not be a witness. It's are you going to be a good witness or are you going to be a bad witness?
Right.
Are you going to be a neglectful, an apathetic, a witness who refuses to witness?
Right. You're going to be some kind of witness. What kind will you be? Okay, we are so excited about our next guest as we're continuing this conversation about evangelism. And it's not just that we're excited because he's got an amazing accent.
No, that's not just it.
It's not just it. Now, that is a major reason why he's here, but it's not the biggest by any stretch.
No. It's in the top 10. But probably more important than that is that this man loves the local church. And I mean that. He loves the local church, and he loves the local church so much that he believes that evangelism, good evangelism, and a good evangelist must be based in the local church. He is the senior minister at All Souls Church in London, England, and he is the founder of Christianity Explored. I am so excited because he's also the author of one of my favorite books. This book has actually changed how I do evangelism. I'm a college pastor, so I go on college campuses to do evangelism. Honest Evangelism, Rico Tice, thank you for being with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. And can I just say something about my accent? What I've noticed is in Hollywood, the only people that are now still allowed to be really horrible are people with my accent.
Really?
If you look at any of the films, from Titanic onwards, the person that speaks like me is the one who's killing the babies. That's the thing, isn't it? You're still allowed to persecute the Anglo-Saxon, middle-class white male. We're the only people left you can shoot. But anyway.
That is so.
The world needs villains, Rico. The world needs villains.
Yeah, and they speak like me.
Like you.
Well, so Rico, we've been talking about evangelism a little bit, and obviously we should, as Christians, always be talking about evangelism.
Yes.
It's who we are. It's woven into the very fabric of what it means to be a Christian. But we're not just talking about evangelism in a vacuum. We're talking about it in the midst of a pandemic.
Yeah, a global pandemic. Everything is going wrong, and it feels for so many people like, how can you actually do evangelism? How do you get out of your home? I can't invite someone over for a meal. Like, people don't really want to talk.
Well, yeah, and depending on where you are, like, America's a big country. Things are very different at states of lockdown and what people are able to do. But I mean, in your experience, in your context, I know things are fairly severe, but you talk to a lot of people. What are some of the questions that you're noticing that people are asking now, whether about evangelism or related to evangelism, that they weren't asking a year ago?
Oh, well, guys, it's very simple. Death is back on the agenda. That's what's happened. So death in England has gone from being a taboo subject that it was very bad to mention because we are in denial, to being something that's a reality. And that is absolutely huge. Every night on the news, you hear that another 1,500 people have died. So at the moment that it is about 1,000 a day. We're on gosh, brothers, I know the American death toll is 4 times this, but 115,000. So I'd say at the moment what's happening is, if I could summarize it, is the non-Christians are asking questions, the Christians are struggling, and everyone is losing their friends. I have done 5 funerals since the 1st of January.
Wow.
And the youngest was a 59-year-old lady. So, it's central London, but people are dying, and therefore there's a humility. So you're able to, whilst before this there was the sort of arrogance in London, we're in control. Now you're able to get from the superficial achievement presented thing that often neighbours would be in for 10 years because they're just fine and they're doing very well, to feelings, and then to worldviews at the core. It's like an onion. You're getting to the center of the onion much more quickly, because you can just say, what's your COVID story? And, everyone's got someone who's got COVID or is in hospital or who's died, or they're waiting for a vaccination. They're thrilled they've been vaccinated.
So if death is kind of the entryway now, and people are open to talking about death once again, and you're right, I hadn't thought about that. It's clearly on the news. Everyone is talking about death. People are scared of death. What have you found has been a successful entry point into that? Like, hey, are you afraid of death? Or
well, it's I just say, look, I've taken 5 funerals in this month. I just go from the personal thing, and this is a serious thing. But the line from Tim Keller that I keep using in the funerals is, for us, we're in a story where the last thing is never the worst thing. So that's the great thing about our story. We're in a story where the 5 funerals I've taken, I am certain that I will see those people again. I'm certain there'll be a day of reunion, because Jesus died and he had a band of followers. He was tried in a Roman Jewish court. He was sentenced to die. They strung him on a cross. They certified him as dead. He was dead. 3 days later, he rose again, and then he was walking around again. And that past certainty gives me a future hope. So because I'm certain the resurrection happened, it means that I have a joyful expectation of the future that makes me calm in the present. And that's what I'm talking about. It's the 3 aspects of hope. We have a joyful expectation in the future based on certain events in the past that enables me, that transforms my present, because I know that I've got a future to my story if I die. And okay, so Ron has died, Kim has died, Helen has died. These are the funerals that I've taken. Fiona has died. these are the people who've died, but and it's conversations with their families too. Where are you on this? So, but I've never had a notebook before where I've got a notebook and I've got the different families on each page, and I'm trying to not confuse the names because there's such a multitude of them. So it's with tears, but I think we're allowed to be serious. And I think what's happened, it's been very interesting being a pastor. This is the first time that I felt respected as a pastor in the culture in 25 years. So because death is real and we need answers to it. So before the lockdown, we were out on the streets. So we have a 5:30 service at All Souls, and we go out onto the streets of London, and particularly at the carol services, we point people to it. We say, come for some food, just some tea and some cake beforehand, but come to a service. Always before, when I've been inviting people on the streets for the last 20 years on a Sunday afternoon, people just walk past glazed. I tell you guys now, again, it's the pandemic, so chatting, there are fewer people. They stop and say, thank you for asking. I don't have time. One guy stopped. He said, I don't believe this, but I'm glad you're here, that you believe it, and I'm glad you're inviting people.
So what are you doing when you're out there? What questions are you asking? What does that look like?
Yeah, we have a sign that says carols at All Souls or 5:30 service, and then we'd say, would you like to come to church? There's some food before. We'd love to invite you. Do you want to come along to a service? We'd love to join us. We just trust the sovereignty of God to bring people. But also we're giving the non-Christians an opportunity to hear, and as they walk past, God is glorified in judgment. In evangelism, it's about the glory of God. Some of them, that will be an opportunity to hear. They've shut their heart, and it will mean on Judgment Day that the Lord says, you had that opportunity, you missed it. So we just trust the sovereign Lord to bring us people, and we trust the sovereign Lord to glorify himself and for there to be judgment. But when we go and do the open air, we're saying this city belongs to Christ. Interestingly, when you take people on open air, they get much better at personal evangelism because they get braver. If you've invited some strangers, you'll find it more easy to go back and invite your friends. So it's great training.
It's such a good note, and I can't help but think about how well that ties into what we just said about being in the local church context. Yes. Like being out and just you're talking to the people that you see, because if you're out on the street corner, you're interacting with people who presumably live nearby or work nearby or and the church family see you doing it. So I stand at Oxford Circus Tube, so as they come up to go to church, they can see us inviting people. So it's a spur to them as well. But also, don't forget, the evangelist's job is to equip God's people for works of service, Ephesians 4:10-12. My biggest job as an evangelist is to equip the church family to be doing the work of evangelism. That's the key. So of course, I give evangelistic talks, but I'm not just a talk giver, I'm an evangelist. So my job is to get to know them, help them get to know their neighbors, and be a cheerleader for them to hold out the gospel to people. Amen. So today I was training our apprentices, and one of our apprentices has got a friend called Laura in Liverpool who's isolated, and we went through what she could say to her just to give this girl who's got a Catholic background an opportunity to find a personal relationship with Christ. So it's that equipping, and when I take people on the streets, it's that as well. It's equipping people for the work.
Well, I feel like what you've shared, just in some people saying no to you, and even this girl that you're helping her to share the gospel with her Roman Catholic friend, is such a good turning point to the next question we have. What's changed since the pandemic, and what do you foresee changing in regards to people's objections to the faith now? Because it is a new world. Maybe the objections are the same. What do you propose the most common objections are and will be?
Well, of course, brother, the thing about this is I'd normally want to spend 2 more years working that out to tell you, because I work it out in my local context, then I'd tell you. So as I tell you now, I haven't really worked it out. That's the whole point. You spend 2 or 3 years with your church family, and then you say, now I've got some principles. Then you push it out to you guys to test it themselves. The trouble is now we're on the hoof. So interestingly, we put in 2 training evenings. I can send you the recordings called Evangelism in a Pandemic. We put one in for November and one in for January. We didn't know what he was going to say. We just thought we got to put them in there because it'll make us say something. And then we spent our time trying to work out what to say. But I think what's changed is the onion. It's about an onion, the layers of an onion. It used to be the superficial presented stuff, then what you were feeling, and then the center was worldview. What's changed now is intentionally you can get to the center much more quickly. You get, look, what are you thinking? Because we're not in control. People are dying. A lot of our hopes and aspirations aren't there. So we've got to go internal to do that. 1 in 3 young women, we believe, as we come out of this pandemic, will have mental health issues. I was listening to a talk by the top people in the country yesterday. 1 in 3 of our young women are struggling with mental health. So the opportunity is massive now.
What you're saying reminds me of what Becky Piper. We had Becky Pippert on our show a couple months back. I think she's a friend of yours. And one of the things that Becky mentioned was she was sharing with one of her friends the gospel, who'd always been against the gospel, wanted nothing to do with it. And then only recently, because of the pandemic, she's had incredible anxiety and said, I thought I was God. I thought I was the God of my own world. But then all of a sudden I've realized, what kind of God needs anxiety medicine? People are broken. They're more attuned.
And if you've got a friendship and you're celebrating people and befriending them, they're talking. I mean, my colleague here at All Souls is called Steve, and he's got a neighbor who has been an ardent atheist for 7 years, but they're doing shopping. He's an elderly man. He's now talking. He just came down the other day and said, well, a friend of mine said he was an atheist, but he's just had a Christian funeral. I don't know what's going on there. But why did he say that to them? This is a pastor. He's just come down and told them that. I mean, it's amazing. And so we're having chats now that we've not had for 20, 30 years. It's very encouraging. It doesn't mean people are becoming Christians yet. The second thing that's huge is the online courses are much easier to attend than attending in person. So it's a much easier thing to switch it on at home and come. And so actually, we've had a massive uptake in terms of people coming, not least because we've got someone in London, and Devon is down in the southwest of England, but her parents have now done 3 courses with me because they know their daughter, and she says, Mum, Dad, come with Rico, and I took the wedding. So suddenly you're able to get people on your courses where there's real relationship, whilst previously it was only people who you knew in London. So the walls have come down in terms of the Zoom has been, we'll never stop running courses online now because I can literally, there are a couple from Adelaide on my course. That's 10,000 miles away. They're getting up at 8 in the morning to come. It's because they've got an All Souls connection and they're coming. And they are Christian, I think, but I think they've been really disillusioned by an experience. So they're trying to find their way back to a church. But interestingly, they're doing it with a church 10,000 miles away, I think, so that they can feel safe.
Yeah.
So the walls have come down for evangelism. You can just get, I mean, say you've got your best mate and he's down in Florida. You can get him on a course now in a way that you never could before.
That's true, yeah. You're absolutely right. It's such an amazing opportunity to invite people in that you never could. And I feel like we've heard that with Alpha, even how Alpha has just exploded, even though they were so resistant to going online. I know, Justin, you were about to say.
Well, no, just to that exact point, tying it back into a local church idea, that there are so many people scattered, and not every local church everywhere is a healthy local church at the moment. But when people within those unhealthy local church contexts are able to then be, I don't want to use the word discipled in an online way, right? But when they are being fed and made into oaks of righteousness when they were saplings before, what they can then do within their own local contexts is astonishing to think about the possibilities of what the Holy Spirit might be doing in the midst of all of this.
Yeah, it's doing 2 things, this pandemic. It's accelerating life and accelerating death. So the liberal churches are dying because they're not online, or they get the energy to do that. They don't have a message. But you're right, people who are in liberal parishes across Britain are going to churches with friends or because they've heard about it. So we get thousands coming on a Sunday morning. And then as they listen week in, week out, they begin to trust you. So that's when they're coming on CE. They're not coming overnight. They're coming because they've watched for 2 months. And they suddenly go, seen Rico a number of times. He's putting on weight, but he seems to be telling the truth. You know, so it's been amazing. There's more life and more death. They're both happening.
Small pivot, but I think it's important to get to. So in your book and in your talks, you very helpfully kind of outline 4 approaches, practical approaches to evangelism that we see modeled in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so like we've got the invitational, the woman at the well, the testimonial, the blind man, like this is what God has done. This is what Christ has done to me. The Paul apologetic method, right? And then Peter, just proclaiming the historical gospel. These have all been, right, very helpful, and depending on who you are, maybe you're more drawn to one than you are another.
Maybe a little bit more history, maybe a little bit more apologetic. And I think that's what I've loved about this book, that I encourage all of our viewers and listeners to consider purchasing, because it's all about, being honest with who you are and being an evangelism in that vein. But you were saying...
Well, yeah, in the light of, again, not trying to say, well, let's just have you be,
the prophet.
The prophet.
Tells us what is going to come in the pandemic.
In your experience lately, in this new context, has one of those kind of emerged as being maybe more helpful in your experience lately, or
any of them less helpful?
Guys, without question, the testimonial. Without question.
Really?
People, because people need to be saying, in the midst of this, my feet are on the rock. It's because I know Jesus. So I'm waking up every day. It's the same day. It's Groundhog Day, and I'm getting through because of Jesus. That's it's not that the others aren't always relevant. I mean, the invitation or the woman at the well, come with me on a course. I know we live 3,000 miles apart, but or 10,000 miles apart. That's still relevant. But it's our ability to say Jesus is the rock. So I think the passage for the pandemic, obviously at one level, the passage is Luke 13, which is whatever the trauma, repent. Whether the wall falls down, whether it's someone's killed in violently, which is Luke 13. The issue is repent. I mean, obviously Luke 13 is the passage for the pandemic, but the other passage I think is Matthew 7:24-27. Are your feet on the rock or on the sand? And what we're seeing is the wind is blowing, and Becky's friend knows that she's on sinking sand. She's not, the wind hasn't blown before for her, Becky Piper, you mentioned. But the reason she's gone to Becky, she says, I'm feeling anxious, because what she's really saying is, I'm on sinking sand. I don't have the resources to cope. Now, when you're evangelizing someone, it's 3 steps, isn't it? It's explore, explain, encourage. Explore, listen. What have they said? Explain. Okay, you remember the song? Are you on the sand or are you on the rock? I think you're on the sand. And then let me tell you how, with all humility, I'm on the rock. It's because with Jesus, the last thing's never the worst thing. So those 3 steps, but there's no doubt the testimonial's the one.
Well, I love that you say that it's the testimonial, because I think, one, everybody has it. If you're a believer, then you have a testimony. You should have something to say. Mm-hmm. And I think perhaps a lot of us have a fear. I think a lot of Christians in this time, especially when so much is coming around, there's so much pain, they're like, well, I don't have the answer to theodicy. And I think that's where most people jump, right? They're like, oh, I need to explain, why does suffering happen? Why did grandma die? Why did this awful thing happen? And I feel like that what you're saying ties so much into a book I was recently reading by John Swinton, where he's like, that's not the answer. It actually doesn't help anyone to give these pat theological answers.
And guys, I mean, there have been times in this pandemic, let me tell you, when we have an 8 a.m. morning prayer meeting, and I have just needed to hear, we go for 20 minutes, and basically our old saints are on it. We've got about 50 of most of them are the old guard at All Souls, and they come on in the morning to pray. Bob Dunkley, Mary Curry, Alison Grieve, they're just lovely Christian saints in their 70s, and and I have just sometimes just had to just sit and hear them pray for 20 minutes in order to get my feet on the rock. Because, we got homeschool, my wife is feeling a bit overwhelmed. I've just needed to, I'm not saying this academically, I'm saying this, that if I hadn't had Jesus the last year, I don't know where I'd be. You know, Lord, to whom shall we go? You've got the words of eternal life. What do we do in all of this? You know, it's been absolutely brutal. And people are losing their jobs. Marriages are breaking. Marriages that have got major flaws, we're finding are just being put under too much pressure with the pandemic. So if your marriage was okay before the pandemic, you're going to be okay afterwards. But if there's a major flaw, there's a lot of pastoral work to do, because it keeps being pressurized amidst this 24/7 home working, homeschool. Good luck to you. You know.
I was having a conversation with a young couple that served with me in the high school ministry, and they're in their first year of marriage, and they're lovely, wonderful people, and giving them encouragement, saying, did you know this is probably the worst year you could have picked to be newlyweds in? It's not easy.
No.
Well, about 6 weeks into the pandemic, I was in bed. My wife was there, and I sort of said something, and she's normally quite good at banter. And I said, now listen, darling, you've got to up your banter. You've got to get better at the humor, because you're the only person I've talked to today. You're the only adult. So I'm going to ask you the question again, and you just need to give me a more witty answer. But, you know, it's that sort of pressure of, you know, she's my only source of, you know, right, come on, darling, come on, a bit more humor, please. Fortunately, she is a stand-up comedian, my wife, so she has remained totally hysterical. She's quite funny, you know, when she gets changed for bed, as she takes her clothes off, she looks at me, and every night she'll go, like I'm some sort of, you know, there we are in the bedroom, male and female, she'll go like this, you know, she's just ridiculous. So she does make me laugh, but I'm glad I've married someone who does make me laugh, because it's been pretty tedious in a pandemic otherwise.
That's awesome. Rico, one of the things you talked about that I think Justin and I have talked about quite a bit that we so appreciate in the book, in the talks that you've given around the world, you've often talked about this idea of a pain line, that there's a pain line that believers need to cross in order to share the gospel. And we all just have to be open to recognizing that, yeah, there's going to be some pain there, and that doesn't really go away no matter how good you get at evangelism. Can you just describe, like, hey, has the pain line changed during the pandemic in any way? And then also, how can we as a church, how can we encourage our brothers and sisters in Christ? Not just pastors encourage their flock, but like, how can we all encourage one another to cross the pain line, whatever it is?
Yeah, great question, bro. Look, just to say, the Bible tells me that I'm going to get rejected because of the gospel. Jesus was rejected, I am. And one of the problems we've had with our evangelism training, which is why I called my book Honest Evangelism, is we're not honest with Christians about the results of doing this, which is that some people will find life and other people are going to hate you because you're the smell of death. And that doesn't change in a pandemic. I mean, even though people are dying, there's some people who are saying, nobody's going to tell me how to live. I'm going my own way. But there are others who are really hungry. Let me give you a text. Hold it. Where's my phone? Hold it. Here we are. This is a text I got today. Listen to this. Okay, this was just today, and it's the absolute joy of doing this work. Here we go. Sorry, just getting it on my right. This is what this guy said to me today. He's been I've been reading the Bible with him for 6 months, and he wrote me this. Hi Rico, are you free for a few moments today? I think I'm ready to take the first official step, open brackets, probably more than halfway there already. So could I kindly ask you to do the honors of doing the sinner's prayer with me? Came out of nowhere. That's what it, so I mean, brother, that's worth it. I mean, can you believe it? But at the same time, that's what he wrote me. So I rang him up before this, and we went through ABCD, admit you've sinned, believe Christ died for you, you know, count the cost and do it. In fact, he's got another one there. I don't know. But now, so it couldn't be, I mean, it's wonderful, but it's also terrible. You know, it's also that there are people that, you know, they hated Jesus, and Jesus says, do you think they're not going to hate you? So I've got to have two things. Number one, I've got to have my identity in the grace of God with evangelism, so that whether you accept or reject me doesn't make me valuable. What makes me valuable is Christ died for me, because you're going to get rejected. Matthew 10:17, in a pandemic or not, I send you out as sheep among wolves. And that's why there's a pain line, because after a bit, or even though it's amazing, that like that guy, I mean, you know, that will keep me going for a year, that text. I'm never going to delete it. But I'm going to be red carded. So we have soccer here where you get sent off with a red. I'm going to get people that go, I just don't want Rico. It doesn't matter how charming he is. And because Christians know that, we then, I suppose understandably, don't tell people. And the reason for that is that we love ourselves more than them. The question is, do you love people? Do you believe the gospel, which is there is a place called hell, and people without Christ go there. It's agony. Now, Jesus did everything to stop us going there, because the only way you get to hell is to trample over the cross of Jesus. There's one way to hell. You trample over the cross. But it still means that I want to tell them there's going to be rejection. So then that leaves me with the pain line, which what I'm saying is, I don't think evangelism is ever that natural. I think it's always a change of gear when you say to someone, even in a pandemic, look, can I ask you, what's your story in this? And, do you have a hope that if you found yourself on a respirator in hospital would serve you? Now, that's a pain line. And some people go, that's not my personality. It's none of our personalities, really. So I'm going to have to, when I ask people questions, and Jesus asked over 300 in the Gospels, it's going to be difficult. So I've got to get my identity clear. I've got to realize there's going to be rejection. And then I think it's about asking a question. So I always say it's 4 steps with evangelism. Number 1, celebrate people. God sovereignly put them in your life. Ask questions by celebrating. Secondly, serve them. What do they need in a pandemic? What do they need? There are deliveries all the time. If you see a delivery van coming, jump out your house, take the delivery so that you're serving. Other people aren't. Thirdly, cross the pain line. Ask a question. Do you want to do a Christianity Explored course or an Alpha course? Or can I show you 20 sentences that are at the heart of the Christian faith? Or, in the midst of a pandemic, look, I wouldn't, I'm nervous about this because I'm a friend of yours, but I wouldn't be your friend if I didn't say, have you thought about what hope you've got at this time? Because I need to ask you. But 4 is exit. The 4th stage is exit, which is Matthew 10:14-17. Wipe the dust off your feet. So if they go quiet, you go quiet and go back to celebrating them. So you go back to saying, I can't believe Brady's won a 7th Super Bowl. I can't believe Gronk's done it. I mean, they must be feeling like idiots back in New England. Why didn't they look after him? Just to say, if you're listening from New England, it's lovely to have you here if you're a Patriot fan. But Bill Belichick was mad to let him go. And I'm an Englishman, but I can see that. You see what I mean? You go back to celebrating them. So you celebrate, serve, cross the pain line, ask a question, and then you exit. Or you if they say, look, I haven't looked at the Bible since I was young. Really? Who did you look at with? My granny gave me a Bible. Really? What did you do? Well, she told me to read John's Gospel. Oh, so you just keep asking questions. Yeah. Does that make sense? But there's always a pain line. Internally, there's a butterfly here because you might get rejected.
Right, and I want to keep pursuing this rabbit hole for the next 6 hours or so, but the battery's going to die on the computer. I just want to add, I think the thing that jumps out at me about how practical that is the way that people will be able to still back out from all of that, even if you're like, oh, you're asking the question, oh, what about, did you read John's Gospel with your granny? Is this, oh, yeah, it was great, and moving on. And the way that they can still find ways of rejecting you, even in the midst of that. Mm-hmm. And remembering that, you start with celebration, you end with celebration. You're not just aimlessly going in saying, well, this is going to blow up in my face and I don't know where to get out.
It's very important to celebrate them. And actually, if you've just had a chat with them about reading John's Gospel with their granny and they stop talking, but they've told you that is massive. Yeah. That's incredible that they've given you that information. Like that guy of my colleague, Steve, the guy comes down and says, I've just listened to a friend of my funeral. He was an atheist. He had a Christian funeral. What do you make of that? I mean, that's amazing. He's told you that. Why has he told you that?
Used car salesman. I think that's sometimes the thing that we tend to go to, right? It's like, oh, I didn't close the deal. It's like, you don't have to close the deal on the first day.
Brother, we've got, our theology is God opens blind eyes. So that text I got today was because the Lord has moved in that guy. That's God who's done that. My job is to keep presenting Christ. And this idea that the results belong to me is an absolute disaster. My job is to present it. And, I've given them, we've talked about John's Gospel. They've had an opportunity to look at it. Brilliant. But whether they become a Christian or not, I mean, it's not up to me to close the deal. It's the Lord that'll do that. Even if they do profess faith, we don't know if, there are 3 types of soil out of 4 that go wrong. I've just got to, you've done brilliantly if they say, absolutely fantastic if they give you a chat about John's gospel. And then we just keep praying. The key is I've got to keep praying, which means I've got to get to bed in time to get up in time to pray. And in a pandemic, getting to bed's more difficult because we all watch stuff late at night to try and recover.
Well, Rico, thank you so much for taking this time to be with us today. This has been a blessing to us. I'm certain that it's going to be a blessing to those who follow the Intersection.
We've been nerding out about this one for a bit, so thank you, brother, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's good, and I'd like particularly to give my regards to Bill Belichick if he's listening in, and I want to say, Bill, brother, you shouldn't have let him go.
We'll forward this on over to him. We'll find his people.
You should have kept hold of Brady. That's my opinion. I'm only a stupid Englishman with a stupid voice, but anyway, there you go. That's what I think.
Thanks, Rico. Again, really appreciate this. Well, thank you for joining us for The Intersection. Whether you joined us on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, we hope that you will like and subscribe, that you will give us 5 stars, that you will, you'll leave a comment.
That you'll evangelize, that you'll leave lots of comments. It's been a while, so let's just go back to Bigfoot conspiracy theories in the comment section, if you please.
If you've got a thought on evangelism that's worked for you, or maybe a story that you want to share, maybe something that really encouraged you or that you've tried, leave it in the comment section as well. We would love to follow up with you. And we hope to see you again real soon.